Hi, everyone. I'm Moira Forbes, and welcome to The Takeaway. Joining me today is someone I'm so excited to be speaking with, Allyson Felix. You all know her as a sprinter, turned mom, turned advocate, and now an entrepreneur. She's became the most decorated sprinter in American history when she clinched her 11th medal earlier this year in the Tokyo Olympics. Her career spans 5 Olympics, nearly 2 decades. But today we're going to talk about why her greatest influence and impact is really happening outside of the sports arena with her advocacy efforts for female athletes. And we're also going to hear about how she's taking the fight for women's equality into her own hands now as an entrepreneur with her latest company, Sage. Thanks so much for joining me, Allyson. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you.
And I just told Allyson earlier, I just ordered a first pair of the shoes from her collection, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But Allyson, I want to pull back just for a second. Earlier this year at the Tokyo Games, it was your fifth games. You're the first game you competed as a mother. Age 35. You weren't as confident you were going to make it to that games. But at that time, I think you were giving voice to a topic around the pressures and the stress athletes faced that had been gaining a lot of attention, that really has become at the forefront of conversations with so many elite and professional athletes. Do you think that right now, this moment represents a new era for athletes?
I do. I think it's a really important time. And I think more now than ever, athletes are being more transparent. I know that's what I tried to do when I was in Tokyo, kind of sharing some of those emotions that I was feeling and some of those things that I think that we just don't talk about as much. And I know as athletes, sometimes we feel invincible and people look at us in that way. But I think it's really important to show that we are human and that we go through all of the same things that everyone else does. So I've just been really proud of, women like Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka, who are really, bringing this conversation to the forefront and also shedding light on some of the challenges that, athletes do face.
You've been, such an advocate. You've become such an advocate for female athletes, which has really marked a shift for this idea that female athletes can have really robust careers and build families. You've talked about the fact that there was this silence or pressure around motherhood for female athletes. You gave birth to your daughter Cameron in 2018. You talked candidly about your struggles leading up to the birth, coming back into the sports arena, and obviously from a professional perspective. Can you talk a little bit more about the silence and fear that mothers in your profession faced?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I became a professional at 17 years old, and I always really felt like I had to accomplish so much before I could even think about starting a family. I really felt like, I have to win all the medals. I have to, do all of this because when I start a family, it seems like, it's the next chapter of my life and I can't really continue on in the sport the way that I was before. And I thought back, like, where did I learn that? Why did I believe that? And it's what I saw. I had friends, training partners, colleagues who had to do that, who either had to hide their pregnancies to secure new contracts, who, weren't able to just be so public because we have all these performance reductions in our contracts and there's no time to get back to top form. You have a baby and you are expected contractually not to miss a beat. And that's just not reality. And also, I just never saw mothers being celebrated in sport because it was happening, but it just wasn't at the forefront. And so really wanting to shift that narrative now. And I think that there are so many mom athletes out there who we are able to see. And I think we need to support them holistically, but also share their life, share what's happening and that we are still able to have success. And I really truly believe that women should be able to make that decision in their own timing, and not feel, really what I felt is that you got to do it all before you can kind of explore.
I mean, it's crazy to even, think about the fact that motherhood, it was considered such a liability, right? Or a threat to your livelihood, in your profession. But obviously it was, and it still is in so many ways. And in 2019, you severed ties with your then sponsor, Nike, sharing a really powerful op-ed in the New York Times about this experience with pay cuts and sponsorship. This is motherhood penalty. You had been a very private athlete before that. I would love for you to talk about that experience for you in terms of what it took for you to come out so publicly, and to come face to face with those fears and that vulnerability, and how you push past those fears.
Yeah, it was really terrifying actually for me to speak my truth. Like you said, I had been a very private athlete, and I really felt like, my job was to perform on the track, and, no one really cared too much what else I had to say. And so it was just through going through my own experiences. And I think also becoming a mother to a daughter, it really gave me that courage that I needed to come forward, because I really thought about, the world that she's going to grow up in, and the battles that she's going to have. And I don't want her to have this battle as well. And so I did come forward in that op-ed. And also just the response that I got to it, there were so many women who just, shared their own stories with me, who supported me. And at one point, I felt like it's amazing to have all this support, and it's really encouraging. But it's also heartbreaking that so many women, across industries can relate to my story, who have been there, and have felt that starting a family has, in some way, they haven't been supported at their jobs. And that just really showed me, I'm where I'm supposed to be. I should be speaking out, and also that we have a lot of work to do.
You said that, when you can speak your truth, on the other side of that fear is freedom. What advice do you give to other women who may underestimate the power of their voice? What was the greatest lesson you learned in this experience in terms of really harnessing your voice and what it means for others?
Yeah, I learned that my voice does have power. And I think before that, I didn't believe that. And so, speaking out, coming out with that op-ed and coming out with my colleagues, a couple weeks later, the maternal policy at Nike was changed. And, I think you think about creating change, and I always think like, oh, it's going to come, somewhere way down along the way. But, it happened relatively quickly. And just realizing that that's using your voice, and we all have a voice, and you don't have to have a huge platform to be able to use it. We can all affect change in our own circles and the conversations that we have. And so I always encourage people to speak their truth, and to lean on their own people, and to share, within their own circles. Even if you don't feel like your voice has power, there's also power in the collective, because I know for me, I felt like I was going through my experience alone. And it was just eye-opening, to hear, once I spoke, to hear from other women that no, there's a lot of people who are in this with me.
After you broke ties with Nike and the pandemic delayed the summer games, you did something which is almost entirely unheard of in the sports business. You decided to build a shoe company of your own. And this to me was remarkable, because obviously you were using your voice in such a powerful way in your platform, but you were also taking action in a really entrepreneurial way to create a business, but also to create the type of brand that exemplified this aspect of empowerment that you had been fighting for. Can you talk a little bit about that effort and how you defied convention yet again to take this next leap?
Yeah, well, after I spoke out and, I parted ways with Nike, I had a new apparel sponsor in Athleta, which was amazing. And I really saw that you could do business a different way. They're 97% female led, and I was just really inspired. And so being a runner, I wanted to find a footwear company, who could give me that same authenticity and feeling where I could stand behind their mission. And I couldn't find it. And so I was talking with my brother, and he's like, well, what if we build it ourselves? And I was like, well, that seems like a lot. It seems very overwhelming. And but the more I sat with it, I said, yeah, like I don't want to have to continue asking for change. Here's an opportunity where we can be that change. And so we did it. We created a lifestyle brand for women, and our first product is a lifestyle sneaker. And and through the process, we learned that shoes have been made for men. And so here's an opportunity that, we want to give women something that they haven't had before, and that's a shoe tailored to them. And I think my proudest moment was definitely being able to be in Tokyo. And, after I was told that, my story was over, here I am showing up to Tokyo in a shoe that my brand created, and to walk away with a gold and bronze medal, running in our company Seish. I just felt immense pride because not only, am I representing women and really trying to show women and moms that, that we can, there's no limits to what we can do, but also trying to create, something new for women.
Yeah, I think when people saw your success at the games, it was this extraordinary celebratory moment. But you talked a lot about that the path to getting there was really difficult, right? You were juggling newfound parenthood with an unpredictable schedule that is taxing for anyone, let alone someone doing the work that you do. You are fighting for a larger mission beyond just the track. You came to the games, again, fifth games, age 35, wearing your own shoes, which is extraordinary. When you look at that journey to get to that point, when did you feel most despondent or challenged? And how did you work your way through it? Because I think a lot of people face those moments of darkness. Do you have any advice or what helped you in that time?
For sure. I think I felt the most challenge right after, kind of going through those negotiations with Nike, actually, because, being an older athlete and being, a mother, feeling that I wasn't believed in and like I couldn't get back. It was a really low moment for me. And I think as an athlete and just even as people, who tying my self-worth to something else, to either a performance or in this case to the way Nike valued me or didn't value me. I had to really work on that and to find, and to know that my worth it isn't related to that. And so that was probably the hardest. And then just throughout the pandemic, I think we all, felt the challenge of being at home and working at home and dealing with family and trying to integrate those two together. And so I definitely had a lot of tough moments where I was literally training in the streets outside of my house and, my daughter was inside and, some days just felt so chaotic and like so much was going on. But I would say for myself, what helped and what I would encourage others is just reconnecting to that purpose, the reason why we're doing something. And when I would have those tough days, I would think about, okay, what is my real purpose in this? Yes, I love to run fast and that's my absolute passion. But more so than that, I want to create change. I want to represent women. And this is the path to do that. And so I got to push forward.
How is it different entering those games if before you talk about that your drive was this love of the sport, obviously, being able to win or to compete at such an extraordinary level. What was that evolution for you like, and how are you different going into this games when your purpose was now something far bigger than those previous times?
Yeah, it was such a different experience. But I started to grow and to evolve, through the different games. And obviously, this was my first games as a mother, and it just gave me a different motivation. I've always been a competitive person. I've loved to win. But now the reason that I wanted to win is because I have this little one at home and I want to be a good role model to her. And I want to show her how to overcome adversity. And we've had our fair share of that over the last couple of years. And, she's been on that journey with me. And I can't wait to tell her those stories of, how we are resilient and how we, to continue to overcome. And it was just so it was like a driving force to be able to have those as the reasons to motivate me and to think about those women. And so many women shared so many different stories with me. And I thought about those, as I trained and as I was in Tokyo. And so I really like being connected to a purpose that has significant meaning.
You're someone obviously who doesn't shy away from competition and pushing yourself. I'd be curious, how has your fight for equality, you really taking stand in such a meaningful way through your business and through your advocacy, how is that fight different than competing in the sports arena in a more traditional sense?
Yeah, it's definitely outside of my comfort zone, I would say. Obviously, as an athlete, it's what I've done all my life. I know, the ups and downs and the ins and outs of all of that. And as I, took steps into this new world for me and fighting for other women and, trying to stand up for things, it's not something that I'm used to. And so just trying to navigate that world and it does make it, easy that it's all authentic. And, there's so many connections and stories, that I think about, but it is new for me and it's a new place, but that also makes it very exciting. And I am so motivated to do more.
Has it created any new types of pressures? You've been competing in the spotlight for close to 2 decades, intense scrutiny on your performance, everyone watching you. But when you take on the mantle of this really extraordinary and important work for other women, did that change the sense of responsibility or pressure you felt?
It kind of shifted it. It's so different than the pressure of being on the track, and feeling like sometimes you have to win. And I feel like with this, I can just be very transparent, about my own experiences, about the fight, about the challenges that I'm seeing and the work that needs to be done. And so I feel like it's a much more I can just be myself and it's a very kind of easy way of being.
How has being yourself, made you a better athlete? I've talked to a lot of different leaders across so many different fields and industries where there was this barrier for whatever reason in terms of really leading with their authentic selves or feeling comfortable in who they were and how they presented it to the world. Has there been a shift for you in terms of now that you are sharing more of yourself and been more open with your experiences? Has that created a shift personally for you in these other areas of your lives?
Definitely. I think that, like we talked about before, just kind of that freedom on the other side of fear. And when you are living authentically, I think, it's just so easy to feel like you don't have to have this perfect picture anymore. And I think as an athlete who is a perfectionist, I struggled with that in the past, wanting it to look like the perfect package. But I think once you get over that hump and you're able to say, some days I'm not okay. Some days I don't have everything together. And I think we all can relate to that. And it's kind of refreshing when you can see someone share not only the perfect picture, but also the moments of struggle that we all face.
Now that you've really embarked on this new chapter, both in terms of, again, this advocacy work, but as an entrepreneur, what's that been like for you to be building out other aspects of your professional life or other chapters within your career after having spent, such a long time focused on such a singular pursuit?
Yeah, it's exciting, that it's different. It's a bit scary, to be in a new world, but I love the opportunity to now do things the way that I've always wanted, to build a brand and to be able to stand by, the mission and to build a team of people who align with that and who are passionate about it. And so being a lot of different places before and, hoping things that would be a certain way, now I get to create something, for women, that's by women, and I get to put that together from the ground up.
What's been some of the lessons you've learned as an entrepreneur and as someone who is now building this brand, going in a completely different different ecosystem, one where there's still a through line of your passion and your purpose, but as you said earlier, taking you out of your comfort zone into this business arena.
I think one of the biggest lessons is just the teamwork. It's all about teamwork, and it's about finding people, experts in their area, and bringing us all together, for that common goal. And being an athlete in an individual sport, I've spent so much of my time, by myself. And of course, I've, been on relays where we come together, but this is coming together in a whole new way. And there's so much to learn from our team, and to be able to build together, and to collaborate, and just really wanting to, foster the best environment where we can, bring out that creativity, but also be able to serve women in a very special way.
What's been, has it been challenging or just different in terms of, your growth in these other areas? Obviously when you're competing, you're constantly looking at performance. You've got, the races and competitions that really benchmark success one way or the other. Has it been hard at all to shift gears, and sort of take on growth and these new learnings in a different arena that operates in such a different way?
Yeah, I think I've definitely had to kind of redefine like what success looks like. And I had to do that even, in my athletic career as well. But, it's very easy to track success, when you're talking about times and places, and especially in our business, really wanting to focus more on the mission. And success looks like bringing together a community of women. And as long as we're impacting lives, then that's successful. And so obviously it's a much different measurement. But also it's really enjoyable to now be in this phase where I can measure success in that way. And I can also see a greater impact.
What would be your advice for other women who are looking to embark on other chapters or career changes? Because, sometimes, especially after the pandemic, sometimes we've been forced to do that, given, the dynamics of the job market. Sometimes it's, been the fact that we've had time to reflect on what's really important to us. Have there been things that you've learned in terms of making a more successful pivot or being able to take that leap of faith into a different arena?
Yeah, really finding the confidence to go for it. I think that if you're
not have that confidence?
Totally. Exactly how you were talking about, more me shifting from, this athletic career into the business world. At the beginning, I wasn't confident at all because it's a whole new industry. And I wasn't sure if it's something I could take on while still competing, and also during a pandemic, building something. So I would encourage other women, to really find if they're passionate about something, even if it's a huge switch for them, to take those steps to make it a reality. And I think I had all of these reasons why it might not work for me. I'm just a kid from Los Angeles, and me and my brother, felt like there was nothing, from the area that we came from. People don't build businesses. And so, but that was almost more motivation, being a founder of color, wanting to be that representation so that the next person does have somebody to look to, and has more confidence in themselves. So it's an enormous opportunity. And I feel like, as women, sometimes we do have to take that leap of faith, and it can be really risky and scary. But again, as we've been talking about, on the other side of that fear, there has been really this sense of freedom.
What was there a moment or a thing that pushed you to hit go on this business, this endeavor? You talked about, I think, again, what so many women will appreciate, those sense of self-doubt or fear or lack of confidence. What ultimately really sort of made you hit go? Was there a moment in time?
Yeah, I remember having the conversation with my brother, as I shared, and I think it was a combination of things. It was one that I had gone to 4 Olympics. I had already 6 gold medals, and I didn't have shoes to wear in the Olympics. And to me, that was a representation of not only my story, but I knew that other women felt that way in different industries. And just being tired of the fight. And I think that was the thing that really pushed me, is saying that, like, I don't want to have to do this anymore. Like, I want to do it myself. And then motherhood has just, it's given me more courage, I think. It's even though it was still scary, I think, being a mom, and I think other mothers can relate to that strength that you find, just finding a way. And I think it was a combination of those two things that really pushed me.
For those who are looking to you as someone who really has emerged as this extraordinary change agent in so many different arenas, what have been some of the biggest lessons you learned around how to drive effective change and to go from sort of the conversations or the frustrations and acting on them and moving the ball forward?
Yeah. I think one of the lessons that I really learned is that, you have to use your voice to do something about things, and you have to move forward. And for the longest, I think there had been wishing for change kind of in silence, and kind of sitting back and saying, like, okay, well, I'm sure somebody else is going to take on this fight. But then realizing that, no, I have a responsibility myself. I sit in a place where I have some privilege and I have a platform, and I need to do something with that. And so just really sitting back and thinking about that, and then taking it into my own hands.
You mentioned that your definition of success through this journey has changed fundamentally. How, when you're looking at your career now, what you've accomplished and the opportunities ahead, how do you define power?
I like that question. How do I define power? Um, Really, I think it's been the strength through experience and just the journey. I remember going to my second Olympic Games, and I had got a silver at the first Olympic Games. And I had put so much energy into, wanting to do better, this second time around. And I ended up getting another silver medal to the same exact person. And it was this huge failure to me and this huge defeat. And I remember just being so devastated in that moment. And now when I look back at that moment, and I say it's probably the single most defining moment of my career, because I felt like I had to look at everything and figure out, am I going to go forward, or am I going to quit? And really seeing how I can change from that. And I think that, to me, that's really what that power is really embracing the journey and embracing those kind of down moments and figuring out, how can I continue on? And now I'm able to look back and be grateful for that experience, because I believe that it set me up for success later on, a success that I wasn't ready to have, in that moment. So I think it's drawing on those moments and creating power later on.
I love that, because I think, in those moments of defeat, and you're in an industry where literally it is a true defeat. Many of us are in other arenas where it's fundamentally different, but still that sting and that pain. I love that idea of sort of that's where you can draw your power from. And I think that's such a great way to look at those dark moments. Allyson, last question for you. I know you've shared so many great insights and advice, and sort of talked about what your story means in terms of how it's resonated with other women. But if someone were to take a look at your story today, where you are, and your plans for the extraordinary work you're doing moving forward, is there one takeaway that you hope that people carry with them? Is there a moral of your story that you think will really resonate with people at this moment in time?
What I hope that it is to speak your truth, and that looks different for all of us. We're all in situations where speaking our truth and what might be wrong in our environments looks different, but really taking that on. And it might be one little step, and it might seem like it's not going to make a huge ripple, but I think it can be so powerful. And so I hope that people can see from my story that it's okay for it to take time to get there. For me, I feel like it definitely was a process of growth and an evolution of myself. But eventually I arrived there. And I think we all have our own individual unique paths, and that's perfectly fine. But when we do arrive, and when we have the ability to fight for someone else.
I love that. Well, I think that is So a great insight. And again, so important that you're right. It can take more time. We all have our own journeys, but when we get there, that's the time to really then make it matter. Well, Allyson, congratulations on all of your success. You've been an extraordinary role model for so many in the sports arena, for so many women, and now as an entrepreneur and someone in the business arena. We can't wait to see all that's ahead for you. And thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Maura. This was really great.
Okay. Thank you, Allyson. And thanks to everyone for joining us here today. And we look forward to seeing you back here next week.